Selamat datang, saya John Uy dari kabarinews.com dan hari ini kami ada Professor Den Hooi dari Singapura. How are you, Professor Den Hooi?
I'm great, and I hope things are fine with you in San Francisco, John.
Yeah, very good. If you can, can you tell me the story of your life from where you were born and how you become an author, please?
Okay, thank you. I was born in a small town called Ipoh in Malaysia. And for my university education, I went to England to study. And actually, at that time, the dream was to be a chartered accountant. That is the dream of me and many of my friends at that time, because that is a profession we hold with a lot of esteem. So after my first degree, I went to do my chartered accountancy, and it was to me very challenging. In fact, I failed 2 times before I finally became a chartered accountant. Although at that time I was struck with illness and I was hospitalized for about 6 months. Though I like to think that may have a part to play, but I think at the end of the day, I always believe I am just an ordinary person. I would have to work very hard to succeed in life. I'm definitely not talented or somebody extraordinary. But I think from there, there's something that I've learned, and something which is I find, which I just heard recently, and which I find is offers a very good lesson. So this lesson would be that it is very good to aim to be successful in everything that we do, to try to aim to be very successful. But there's also an important lesson to learn how to cope with failure. So I think the failure for that examination, plus the challenge of overcoming my my illness, because what happened is I had an operation on my backbone. So for 5 whole months, I was put in a plaster cast. It's very challenging that at night when you sleep, you cannot turn your body. In fact, it's not just at night, it's day and night for 5 months. So as an inspiration or encouragement to everyone is that sometimes life may not be always smooth going. Try to accept it as best and try to draw lessons from it. So I'm very fortunate that I had a very good doctor in a public hospital. He happened to also be the orthopedic surgeon for Prince Charles. But as part of his service, apart from being in the private practice, he serves doing community service at the general hospital, public hospital. So I was very fortunate. And eventually I qualified as a chartered accountant, came out to work, and then I joined the university. So when I joined the university, I was very fortunate. The Singapore government gave me a scholarship to pursue my PhD. And my PhD is in the field of auditing. And that was at Manchester University. So nothing to do with marketing. And myself going into marketing is what we call accidental. In the sense that when I first joined the university, I was at the School of Accountancy in the National University of Singapore. The government then had plans to turn the Nanyang Technological Institute into a university in the future. So what they did was that they find that to them one of the fastest way would be to move one whole school from the National University of Singapore to Nanyang Technological Institute. So in 1987, the whole school, or almost the whole school, 99.9% I would say, of all the faculty in the school moved to NTI, which eventually became Nanyang Technological University. So in 1991, when we became a university, we wanted to start a business school. And at that time, all the professors were accountants in the field of accounting. And as a business school, we must have the marketing subject. And my dean at that time told me, Dan, I want you to teach marketing. I got a shock of my life because I say my PhD, he might have forgotten, is in auditing, not in marketing at all. So he remembered that in my undergraduate days, I majored in marketing and accounting. And then he jokingly told me that, Dan, you know, at least when I see you from above, when I'm upstairs and when I look at you, you at least have some resemblance to the father of marketing, Professor Philip Kotler. So he said jokingly that I think you are the person I want you to teach marketing. So that is accidental of how I got into marketing. Quite a long story. I'm not sure whether you want me to proceed.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So when I moved into marketing, as with any other marketing professors, I learned marketing, teach marketing, what I would call the usual types of marketing, until I met my guru. I have two gurus which I picture here, Professor Philip Kotler and Pak Hermawan Kartajaya. So I consider them as both my gurus is because I really learned a lot of marketing from them. In fact, both of them are very good, not in terms of being intellectuals. Pak Hermawan is very intellectual. Although he always say he has no PhD, he's not a professor, but you don't need a PhD, you don't need to be a professor. And maybe this is something that I would like to share with your audience, and that is, please do not be constrained. I always say a position, a name is always just a name. As an accountant, we use the term substance over form. So the very fact that if you don't have a PhD, you're not Dr. So-and-so, does not mean that you cannot be as good or even better than somebody with a PhD, intellectually speaking. So a lot, I think, depends on ourselves, how we see things. So one important lesson I draw is always substance over form. Don't be carried by too much away by just a title. So from Pak Hermawan, from Philip Kotler, actually I learned a lot. I learned a lot is especially with this concept that Pak Hermawan came out, which is called marketing. And what marketing stands for is always continually sense and respond to changes, whether it's for organizations or as individuals. We must always appreciate that the business landscape, the environment will always change. And very importantly is whether we can adapt and respond. Of course, sometimes we may want to proact instead of just react to changes. So a very brief background of my journey to become what I am today. I am just an ordinary person, but I always try to learn.
So my first question is, how do you guys meet?
How we met was that because as a marketing professor, then I find that it is very important for us as a person, as an individual, or as an organization to network. And that's why then I joined the Marketing Institute of Singapore. I was a council member, and I think that was in 1998. That was during the period of the crisis that there was a meeting of the Asia Marketing Federation that was held in Bali. And that was the first time that I met Pak Hermawan there at the Asia Marketing Federation meeting in Bali. And I found that this is a body which is very interesting, is very exciting, because as individuals, we need to network. And a professional body will be a very good platform to network. So I took interest in trying to find out more about what we can do for marketing for Asia, since it's an Asia, at that time it was called Asia Pacific Marketing Federation. And I feel that maybe this may be the accounting side of me that comes out, that I find is always good for any organization to have checks and balances. So that's why then I propose to Paramawan that APMF should have a foundation. In other words, a foundation could serve as a form of a check and balance. It can also be a platform to attract eminent people to share their experiences with our colleagues running the Asia Pacific Marketing Federation. And hence, subsequently, the Asia Pacific Marketing Federation Foundation was formed. And although it doesn't play a very active role because the foundation always recognize that it should be the body that execute, that implement, but it plays some important functions. Just an example, one of them which is very important is finance and funds. If you look at a lot of organizations, even families, they break up because of funds, because of money, because of finance. So what the foundation does is that it keeps the money of the Asia Pacific Marketing Federation. So it keeps that, it strengthens the governance of the whole body. And today, I must say, I'm really happy to hear about this. And Paramawan, he's the chairman of the Asia Marketing Federation. So this is a regional body of professionals in the marketing field. It's a very professional body. There are 17 countries together, and it's very harmonious. No infighting, no political fighting, because people knows that with Paramawan's leadership, he always emphasized, and something that we have learned. For example, I come from Singapore, Paramawan is from Indonesia, so we are members of ASEAN. So one thing that we have learned from ASEAN, if we were to look at it, if somebody were to criticize what ASEAN has done, so one very important lesson is harmony. And ever since ASEAN was formed in 1965, you find that there is no war between any of the 10 ASEAN countries. And one of the main reasons is because we always emphasize on harmony. And something that we learn a lot from the Indonesian way. And the Indonesian way is always emphasizing, let us work together. Let us focus more on our commonalities than differences. So if your audience, let's say, comprise business people or individuals, it's the same principle that will apply. Whether within our family, whether with our business partners, with our suppliers, with our customers, always aim to work harmoniously together. So the Asian Marketing Federation also offers a very good lessons. And we meet very often. We meet at least twice a year. And you find that then we are able to form these international relations. I appreciate that there's a lot of Indonesian diaspora in the United States. I think all the more so, if a person is in an overseas country, all the more so you need to form a very harmonious relationship with each other, help each other. Don't only help each other as Indonesians, extend your help to other communities as well.
Okay, so when you talk about accountability, especially in the family business, can you elaborate that more, please?
Yes, so as with...
I'm sorry, check and balance, yeah? Sorry about that.
Yes. So as with any business, whether it is a corporate business or even where there is a family business, I always believe that governance is very important. Transparency is very important. Transparency will be a very good form of governance. Very often, breakups or problems with relationships happen is because of suspicion. Of course, there will always be, whether if it's families or organizations, there will always be some bad apples. But in general, I think with families, with organizations as well, everyone recognizes that to progress, to move forward, it is very important to stay united. And one way to stay united is to make sure there is good harmony. And one of the ways is through transparency. So like in the Asia Marketing Federation, everyone knows how much the body has. All the transactions are reviewed at every meeting. And the funds, if it is to be used, everyone knows where it is used, how it is used. I would always say that is the same with family businesses. Care for each other, love each other, and one of the best ways would be reduce the frictions or suspicions. So very often family businesses may get into trouble. It's not because of lack of capabilities. Sometimes it's more because of principles. That's why be transparent, show to everyone. I think a lot of children will have a lot more respect for parents who are seen to be fair. So if you are the head of a family business, it would be very good to be as fair as possible. Of course, as human beings, we are not perfect, but we must make sure that we are not too unequal. So try to be as fair, be as transparent. Everyone in the whole family knows what is going on, so that rumors, sometimes there may be rumors and all this, will not undermine that. And that will be a form of governance.
Okay. And then you mentioned that Philip Kotler and also Pak Hermawan are your guru. What did you learn from each of them?
From both of them, and then individually each of them, from both of them, one very important lesson that I've learned is humbleness, modesty. For example, with my first encounter with Professor Philip Kotler, I was astounded. I was astounded by his sense of modesty. And I always feel that, wow, you know, one of the paths to great success is really when a person does not think too highly of himself, however, or herself, however successful that person may be. So just an example is that when I met Professor Philip Kotler, I thought that would be a great opportunity to try to learn from him. But on the other hand, he was asking questions. If he knows you are from a particular country, example for me from Singapore, he would ask a lot about Singapore. And guess what? He even pulled out a little notebook from his pocket and started to make notes. Wow, that to me was a very humbling experience. How can a guru be learning from you? So that is something that I learned a lot. And that's the same thing with Pak Hermawan. He's always very humble. To me, he's extremely successful. And that is the reason why this year, on the 30th anniversary of Mark Plus, both Professor Philip Kotler and myself will be writing a book about him and Mark Plus. And the purpose of us wanting to write is because I know Hermawan has a mission in life. His mission in life is to spread the knowledge about marketing. So we hope that this book will also be part of a contribution to his mission in life. So from both of them, I learned two very important things. One, modesty. Second, and what you may call an always strong passion to learn, even though they are so knowledgeable. So something which I would like to share with all your audience is, please always continue to learn. See learning as a passion. Both of them are still learning. So Professor Philip Kotler is 89 now. And Pak Hermawan always shares, and he doesn't mind sharing, that he's 72. And both of them, they still continue to learn, still very humble. So from both of them, I learned a lot. Individually, from Professor Philip Kotler, as an academic, he has shown something which is very important. And this is something I would like to share with all academics. Academic research is important, but please also turn your academic research into practical knowledge. It is very possible. Just recently, I complimented my colleague. He has published an academic paper in one of the top journals, and he turned that paper into a Harvard Business Review article, 2 articles. Harvard Business Review, I always see it as academic practitioner oriented. So academic research is definitely very important, but to benefit more people, not just those in the academic world, translate your academic research into professional knowledge as well, practical knowledge. So this is something that Professor Philip Koller has done and has done exceptionally well. And from Pak Hermawan, he is a practitioner. So I know the story of Mark Plus very well because I've been working with him very closely since we first knew each other. And you may say that, yeah, since 1998, when we first met, we have kept a very close relationship. So he's like my brother. I always learn so much from him. So he will give a lot of hopes to all those startups. Mark Plus was a startup. Not only startup, it's like a one-man show. So when you read the book, I am now reading the book because his staff is helping to write the story about Mark Plus and all the various marketing concepts and everything. So I learned a lot. When Mark Plus first started, it's like a startup, and typical of any startup with barely any resources. It had its fair share of challenges, maybe very challenging because, as what Pak Hermawan said, at that time in Indonesia, people don't really believe in marketing. People always believe that if you want to be successful in business, is guanxi, connections, which is definitely very important. But in addition to that, you also need to have strong professional knowledge. So he was starting, and that's why Hermawan is truly the father of marketing for Indonesia. He started it. He really grew it. So for all those in the entrepreneurship or aspiring to be entrepreneurs, I would say, look for opportunities. Pak Hermawan senses there is one very important thing is the opportunity. But secondly, his passion, and he built it up. He really worked very hard through blood, sweat, and tears. Success does not come easy. So try to find something that is your passion, something that you love, something that can enable you to do well, something that can also enable you to contribute.
Okay. And how did you start talking to each other to write a book? Because you have quite a few books here.
Actually, I was given the opportunity by Pak Hermawan when I first co-authored the book together with Philip Koller, him and myself. It's called Rethinking Marketing. Actually, he doesn't need me. Both him and Professor Philip Koller could have done the book without me at all. But I think maybe he may see that perhaps he may like me as a person, and also perhaps he may be thinking it's also good to make the book more international instead of just a professor from the US, not just himself from Indonesia, maybe also somebody from Singapore. Maybe he finds that Singapore may have lessons that can also offer to the world as well. So that's why he invited me. As I mentioned, he doesn't need to invite me. The book would be as successful, perhaps even maybe more successful.
Okay, so let's start with Indonesian diaspora who wants to open business, let's say anywhere in the world. What is your advice?
For any businesses, and this is something that I learned from Pak Hermawan's marketing concept, he always say, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. So his model is really very simple, but yet very powerful. If I may just make a reference to this, so his model, one of the sub-model is called outlook. For any business or any aspiring entrepreneur, I would say perhaps please consider this framework from Pangamawan. It's simple but very useful. There will always be many areas one is interested in. But think about outlook, which comprises 4 C's. The 4 C's are customers, competitors, changes in the market, and the company itself. So I will just repeat the 4 C's: customers, competitors, changes, company. So as a business person, one has to be pragmatic. And the pragmatic reason is that you want to do something that will not only be profitable, but will be sustainably profitable. Of course, in the process of so doing, you can be a social enterprise, you can be a business enterprise, you can still do good to do well. For example, I was the director of the Nanyang Entrepreneurship Center, and at that time, we worked with the Kauffman Foundation. The Kauffman Foundation is arguably one of the most impactful foundation for entrepreneurship in the United States. And I was surprised to learn that the founder of the Kauffman Foundation, he donated some $2 billion US, and his money cannot be used to help even the poor, the sick. In fact, his money as the charity is donated to help entrepreneurs, to promote entrepreneurship. Wow, I was surprised. It's the first time I hear of a foundation. A typical foundation to me is always a foundation is trying to do good to help the poor, the sick, and everything. But for Kauffman, he always believed there are already other foundations with very good capabilities in serving these areas, the poor, the sick. But he always believed in order to help, you must have the means. That's why Kauffman Foundation, they have this slogan. And if I remember correctly, the slogan is developing the economy, then helping humankind. So you need to have the means. And that's why for your listeners who want to be entrepreneurs, something which I would say which is very important, sorry, before I come back to the 4 C's. Personally, as when I was looking after the Nanyang Entrepreneurship Center, I always believe in 4 P's of the spirit of entrepreneurship. And the 4 P's are purpose, passion, perseverance, principles. When you start a business, reflect very, very deeply what is the purpose of you starting a business. For sure, to make money, to be profitable, that is important. But that should not be your most important reason. That can be a very important reason, but please go beyond. Start with a purpose. What is the purpose of your business? And at the Nanyang Entrepreneurship Center, we came up with a slogan. What is the reason why for the existence of the Nanyang Entrepreneurship Center? And for us is to provide entrepreneurship education to make a meaningful difference to humankind. So if you start a business, even be it, for example, a restaurant, think about it. Sure, you want to make money, but have a purpose. If your purpose can be to make people happy through the stomach, you are doing a good job, doing a good thing. Happiness to humankind is very, very important. That is the most important reason for our existence, happiness. Happiness not only for ourselves, but for others. So if I'm a restaurant owner, I will find it so much more meaningful. If my customers come in they really enjoy my food, they really feel happy. And in order to do so, I've got to make sure that my food, my price, my everything is of good value to the customers. And in that process, I can make money, but that will be the byproduct, not the main product. So in any business we want to set up, please think about your purpose. And your purpose must be a meaningful purpose. And if you have a meaningful purpose, it is likely you will be more passionate to make sure that it's successful. So from purpose to passion. And we need to have passion. If we do something that we have passion, we will find it meaningful. And even when we work very hard, blood, sweat, and tears, it can still drive us, it can still keep us going because we have the passion for it. And that is important because in entrepreneurship, there will be ups and downs. For every success story, it's like an iceberg. We are seeing just the success part that comes above the water. Most sink, most entrepreneurs, they fail, especially in the first few years. So we need to have perseverance. And we can persevere, have a better chance of persevere when we have a passion. And our passion must be driven by purpose. So purpose, passion, perseverance, and last but not least, principles. We must have values. There are a lot of people, they make a lot of money, but a lot of them, unfortunately, are greedy. They do it through illegal, immoral means. You can be successful in making money, but if you don't have principles, the right values, remember, you are passing down these values for future generations to come, including your own family members. Will you be happy if you have a lot of money, but you are passing down the wrong types of values to others? So that's why I would say very important, purpose, passion, perseverance, and principles. Have these should be your guiding spirit. That's why I call this the spirit of entrepreneurship. But of course, just with the spirit alone is not enough. You need to have practical knowledge. You need to be able to find the opportunity to seize them. So now coming to the question, as a budding entrepreneur, where do I look for my opportunity? The 4 C's will come in. So the 4 P's and now the 4 C's. Customers, competitors, changes, and company. Customers. Whatever you do, you cannot succeed if you do not have customers who will want to have your product or service. So gaining customer insights will be very important. Think about it. Who are your customers? What do they want? What value can you provide? I don't know whether I have time to explain these in
Please
depth.
do. Please do.
Okay, thank you. So this will be very important. Just now I mentioned substance over form. A customer is only a name, it's only the form. Most important is if you are looking for a customer, always ask yourself, what value does the customer want? That is the substance. A customer is only the name. The substance is value. And what is value to a customer? So from Leonard Berry, Valery Zaitama, and Parasuraman, 3 great American professors, we learned this concept which is called value. And what is the meaning of value? Value means benefits minus cost or benefits over cost. So in other words, why would a customer buy your product? Why not buy a competitor's product? A customer will buy your product because to him or her, your product offers the best value. And what is the value? When we buy a product or when we use a service, we have to pay. That is a cost to us. But we don't mind paying so long as we can get good benefits. So what a customer will look for is good value. They don't mind paying the cost so long as they get good value. And for value, benefits is important. Please do not only think about functional value of your product. Think about the emotional value. So, for example, when a customer buys a product, that product is useful, that is the functional value. Think about your product that you are going to provide to your customer. Do you provide good functional benefits to the customer? Do you also provide good emotional benefits? So emotional benefits here could mean happiness. It could mean, for example, prestige maybe. So think also about the emotional value. And something that I learned from Pak Hermawan, which he advanced it even further, is spiritual value. For example, people would like to buy products from companies that do good. And that is the spiritual value. It's nothing to do with religion. It's to do with human spirit. So ask yourself, as a business, what benefits are you offering your customers in return for the price that you charge them? So think about the functional value of your product or service, the emotional value, as well as the spiritual value. So that's why in the book Rethinking Marketing, a customer is termed a value demander. So always bear in mind, do not take customer loyalty for granted. A customer will remain loyal to you so long as they can get the best possible value from you and continue to do so. Then next thing is competitors. Don't be angry with your competitors. In fact, if you are in a business and there are no competitors, you have to think twice whether that should be a business you should be in. Unless it's a monopoly like the military and whatever, of course there's no competition. But in businesses, do not be angry with your competitors. See them as doing you a favor because they are enriching the market. In fact, it is because of competition that businesses can progress. If I can give you an example, if we talk about airlines, why is it that the Middle East airlines, they do so well? I'm talking about normal times, not the COVID-19 times. Why is it that Qatar Airways, Etihad, and Emirates, they do so well? It's because of competition. Competition, healthy competition, contrary to what some people may think, is actually positive. So if you are an entrepreneur, a competitor, what is a competitor? He is a value provider. He is a value supplier. He's trying to provide a better value than you to your customers. So please see them as positive. Is you have to challenge yourself. How can you do better than them to give the best possible value to your customers? So for a budding entrepreneur, think about it. What customer do you want to serve? What value can you provide? And for the value that you provide, can you provide it better than existing competitors and potential competitors? Think only not about today, but also about tomorrow. So there's a book written by Gary Hamel and Prahalad. It's called Competing for the Future. So for entrepreneurs, when you think about business, when you do a business, please do not think only about how you compete today. Think also about how you will compete tomorrow. And then the third C is changes. Changes in the environment very often are the source of business opportunities. It's the changes in the environment. And in the environment, there are many types of changes. There are actually 6 types of changes: technological, political, economic, cultural, social cultural, on the legal side as well. So let me just repeat this again because I have an acronym. It's a biased acronym because it starts with the first 3 alphabets, DEN, that happens to be my name, Den, DENTPC. DEN-TPC means, so let's look at it. What are the demographic changes? Example, aging populations. Aging populations could provide an opportunity. D is for demographic. E is economic. Economic changes. So for example, Indonesia, just an example, has done very well. It is really a land of opportunity. Compared to 40 years ago, 50 years ago, for example, it is a wonderful place, really wonderful land of opportunity. Economic changes. Another change will be the natural changes. Unfortunately, natural changes, it could be earthquakes or it can be whatever. For example, in Indonesia, I visited Aceh 1 year after the tsunami. Even 1 year after that, it was flattened. Another Indonesian that I always consider my hero is Pak Kuntoro Mangkusubroto. I am so full of admiration for him. If you visit Aceh before the tsunami and after the tsunami, Aceh has done so well after the tsunami. So the tsunami, a natural event, unfortunately, in fact, actually created the opportunity for Aceh to be so much better today than yesterday. So DEN, demographic, economic, natural changes, followed by TPC, technological changes. So changes in technology, for example, we wrote a case in our latest book, Asian Competitors, on Gojek. So that has really transformed the environment, and it's because of technology. The other two major forces, political. P is political. So like, for example, Indonesia. If you look at Indonesia, I really beg to differ. Sometimes I really feel the media is portraying a very unfair picture of Indonesia. A lot of people always associate Indonesia with the bombings and all this. But if you look at it, I feel that Indonesia is really a model for the world. A model, for example, for the Islamic world. Is really one of the most democratic countries in the world. And if people were to associate, for example, Islamic countries with terrorism or whatever, if you look at Indonesia, it's really a best example. I visited Indonesia so many times, and it's a wonderful country. It's a model for the world. So political changes is also another example of the changes. And last but not least will be the cultural, social changes. So culturally, socially, we have to change. When I look at my own children, for example, we are in different generations. I have to change. That's why I say marketing rocks. So this is very, very important. We have to change culturally, socially with the times as well. So I mentioned the third C, which is changes. As entrepreneurs, please look at these 6 types of changes: demographic, economic, natural, technological, political, cultural changes. These are your windows of opportunity. And since you are the US, I always use these examples, although they may be a long time back, but I call them evergreens. So if we were to look at it in the sneakers industry, since everyone is very familiar with the sneakers, how is it that Adidas, which was a huge conglomerate, how is it that Phil Knight, who started Nike, could come up to the ranks of Adidas? When Phil Knight started Nike, in the early days, it was relatively small. And how did it come about? To me, is due to a social, cultural change. Adidas is a very good pair of shoes. For serious running, for football, it's a very good pair of shoes. But Phil Knight saw a trend, saw a changing time, a social, cultural change. And what was that? In the late 60s and early 70s, a lot of baby boomers. And because of a higher standard of living, people begin to value a healthy lifestyle more and more. And a lot of people took to jogging. So Nike rode the wave, the jogging wave, to success. It was a change in the social, cultural environment. that provided the opportunity, because otherwise it's very difficult to challenge Adidas, which we all know is a German-made product, and German-made products, German is a German product. At that time in the 70s, they are very good in terms of quality. It may be made anywhere else, but they always try to ensure top-notch quality wherever it is manufactured. And relating to this is that another example for entrepreneurs, and that is when Adidas and Nike were huge conglomerates. I think it was the founder of Reebok. He started the Reebok just with one shop. It's just a family business, one shop. Where on earth would one ever believe that a one-shop business can rise up to the ranks to become a huge multinational conglomerate and on the ranks of Nike and Adidas? And that was Reebok. And was it because Reebok can make a better pair of shoes than Nike and Adidas? Is very difficult. But what gave Reebok the opportunity was one of his very enterprising or entrepreneurial salesmen going around, and he spotted that there was a group of people doing an exercise. And this exercise grew in popularity, especially when celebrities also took up to it. Books were written on it, and there was none other than aerobics. So it was in the 80s, the craze for aerobics, and that created the opportunity for Reebok to really climb up. So for aspiring entrepreneurs, I would always say, when you want to look at opportunities, please analyze the environment, the landscape. So customers are important, competitors are important, changes in the environment are important. These are what I call external forces. And last but not least, of course, yourself as a company. For a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs, one of the most discouraging things is limited resources. There will always be a fear that, but how can I ever build up a business when my resources are limited? But always bear in mind, a lot of the big and successful businesses that we see today, they are really, really born from very small businesses. Indonesia has so many good examples about that. Sampurna, for example, when I visited Pak Hermawan in Surabaya. So if you look at that, Pak Mokhtar Riyadi as well, the Lippo Group, if you look at all of them, Pak Ciputra as well, they all started very small. So always bear in mind, start small, build big. Do not be discouraged just because you are small. And as a company, of course, then you have to think about ways to build your resources. When Mark Plus started, it was very small. Pak Hermawan worked very hard. It is a step-by-step. Success does not come overnight. So if you are a small company or any company, what are the ways to build up your strengths? So generally, there are three ways to do that. One is develop your own resources. Like Pak Hermawan, he developed his staff. It's not just himself. So slowly and gradually, more and more of his staff, develop your own internal resources. That will be one way. Of course, when you are big enough, have the resources, you can send your staff for training, for development. So that will be one way, is build up, develop your resources internally, slowly, bit by bit. What Pak Hermawan has offered are very important lessons. Second way is to form strategic alliances. And this is where I learned from Pak Hermawan. Why was he so keen to write a book together with Professor Philip Kotler? Our books have become bestsellers. It's not because of my name. If I write a marketing book, my accounting student, as soon as they see my name on the book, they will drop it. But it's because of the names of Professor Philip Kotler and Pak Hermawan. And when Pak Hermawan first started, so that's why the co-branding with Professor Philip Kotler is very important. As a small entrepreneur, think about ways and means to co-brand. Paramawan did not first start with Professor Philip Kotler because he got to know Professor Philip Kotler later on. He first started to know Al Ries, who is very good for his marketing book, especially on positioning. So think about ways of strategic alliances. So strategic alliances, co-branding is important. Think about ways in which you can win, whether you can win some awards. If you can win some awards, especially from reputable bodies, that is very, very important. If I may just share, for example, my daughter, she did an internship with the Rockefeller Foundation. So I was wondering, but why for your internship, why don't you work for a commercial company? Why do you choose the Rockefeller Foundation? Then later on, I knew the value of it. That is a very strong branding, doing a lot of good things. So from her, she can get a lot of value from that. So for budding entrepreneurs amongst your audience, so please think about strategic alliances. You have to work hard. You have to convince them. Why would Al Ries or Professor Philip Kotler want to work with Paramawan, even though he knows Paramawan is good, for example, right? So here you have to prove something extraordinary. And that's why, like even within my own name, HOOI, I try to make use of that. So for my name, HOOI, I came out with these 4 terms: holistic, optimistic, outstanding, integrity, HOOI. H stands for holistic, O for outstanding, another O for optimism, and I is for integrity. So I will just cover outstanding. Always bear in mind, as a human being, we cannot be good in everything, but try to find an area. Every one of us, we are talented. We may not be talented in every field, but we will have a talent. Every human being has a talent. So think about what is it you got to be outstanding. So Park Hermawan could convince Professor Philip Kotler to co-author a book with him because he could demonstrate to Professor Philip Kotler not only his passion in marketing, but also his strength in the marketing knowledge and concepts. So as an entrepreneur, as for you, 3 ways to build your strength: develop internally, strategic alliances, and last but not least, of course, when you have the means, what I would call mergers and acquisitions. You will not have strengths in every field. So work with somebody, or at least you may have to acquire skills. So you can acquire skills doesn't mean you poach. For example, Paramawan is very clever. He knows that Mark Plus, although it has 300 consultants, but will not have knowledge in every field. So what he does is that he identifies, for example, industry experts. And when he runs industry roundtables, these industry experts will come and share. So in a way, you could be working together with them or acquiring them for that period of time. So in other words, then to come back to the question, but where is my opportunity? Look at your 4 C's. Look at it. Whatever you do, would there be customers for it? Will you be able to offer a value that customers want? Can you do it better than the competitors? Whatever you offer, is it aligned with the changes in the environment? And whatever you do as a company, can you provide it either on your own or through a strategic alliance? And so the 4C is like a diamond, and this is a concept from Park Hermawan. I must fully acknowledge that. And that opportunity gap is in the middle, is the circle in this triangle, this diamond shape of the 4 C's. So think about your 4 P's. Think also about your 4 C's to identify the opportunity.
Okay, excellent. That's a lot of information there. Now, okay, as always with entrepreneurship, I like to understand about one of the 4 C's, which is competition. How do you approach this, especially when you deal with big companies like Amazon and all this? How does an entrepreneur start competing, and how do you approach that way?
Very good question. As we know that there are some competitors that are just so immense, they're already just so successful, and they seem to be very good in everything. But believe me, no one organization is good in everything. There will always be something they cannot be good at. Because if they can be good in everything, and if they do everything, they will be doing themselves the biggest disfavor. Why would I say that? Is because if you try to do everything, you will lose what we call your positioning. The market will begin to wonder, what are you really, really good at? So if you are especially a small business, always bear in mind you have one advantage: nimbleness, flexibility, and you are likely to be able to build good and deep relationships, which sometimes a lot of big organizations will not be able to. So in marketing, we always say there are various types of attack strategies. When we say attack, is how do you deal with your competitors? So a very important area that we would always suggest for small businesses will be flanking attack. Flanking attack meaning then that to identify an area that your competitor did not cover very well. So there are always that. If I can just use an example here in Singapore right now, because we are in Singapore, we call it circuit breaker. It's like working from home. So a lot of people in many, many countries will rely on home food delivery. So we do have like Grab. Grab is also into food business. Grab, as you know, is really very, very successful as well. So we have Grab, we have Food Panda, we have Deliveroo from Britain. Interestingly, so if you want to go into this business, you may ask yourself, but how would I compete against these are big, big companies? And not too long ago, one company came out, started small. You would not have heard of it because it's in Singapore, it's small, but it's doing very well. It has gained a lot of customers. And the name is called Order, O-D-D-L-E. What did it do? Because if I go to GrabFood, if I go to Food Panda, if I go to Deliveroo, on their site, they will list the eateries within the proximity of my house. But there are some food that I know I love. Even in COVID times, I would really love to have them. They are far away and it's not served by any of these. And here comes Order. So in other words, they have found a niche. They have found an area that is not well covered by the big boys. So in a way, if we were to look back at the Reebok example, sure, Nike is very good for jogging. Adidas is a very good pair of shoes, especially in that period of time. At that time, of course, now they're into many, many areas. So the wonderful opportunity for Reebok was in the area of aerobics, because at that time nobody covered it yet. So in other words, to deal with your competitors, learn from them, see what they do, try to identify an area that they did not cover. Maybe here, if I can use an example of making use of technology, is that we have a lot of supermarkets here. There was a startup years ago, and it's called RedMart. They were the first to offer online groceries. And what is interesting, they provided their own groceries. In other words, instead of doing an online where they go to the different supermarkets to shop and deliver to you, they have their own warehouse providing groceries. And today is very successful because they were the first to do so. If you can be the first and only, that is very powerful. But if you cannot be the first and only, it's nothing wrong to be a follower. but adapt it to your local circumstances first, situation first. Because something may be successful elsewhere, study the marketing successes and mistakes as well that companies have made. And if those successes, see whether you can apply to your situation. So Air Asia may be another example. It was a budget airline that was very successful before the COVID, of course. Hopefully after the COVID, it will still be. They are not the first budget airline. They learned it from Ryanair, they learned it from Southwest, but they brought it to Asia, to Southeast Asia and to Asia. So a lot of things we can learn is, if there is something that is successful elsewhere, can we adapt it to our local environment? So for your audience, Indonesians in US, there are a lot of business successes within Indonesia. So one can see whether one can adapt or adopt those products, Indonesian, whatever that makes it successful in Indonesia. I think that will be a very good starting point, because for your audiences, they are very familiar with their home country in Indonesia. Although recognizing that Indonesia is huge, very diverse, in fact, that is a strength. That is a strength. You may be a Javanese, but for example, if you go to Medan or if you go to Ambon, to different places, right? Wow, there is so much to learn from all these different places. In fact, coming from tiny Singapore, I envy Indonesians.
Okay. All right. So another question I have, because right now we are in a challenging time with COVID-19. Now,
Yes.
a lot of people are staying home to work. Okay. So is there any business that one can do? Because we expect this COVID-19 is going to, maybe until next year, until we find a vaccine. Okay. So what example do you think has the potential during this period?
Okay. Actually, there are various sources of businesses that are thriving in such an environment. I think McKinsey, for example, they do come out with newsletters and all this. And if I'm not wrong, they're complementary. So that will be just one of the sources. So, of course, during a COVID time, 19 times, most businesses are negatively, very badly affected, understandably so. But there are some businesses that thrives. For example, I, together with Pak Hermawan, we also belong to an organization that is called the Asian Council for Small Business. So apart from the Asian Marketing Federation, Hermawan and I are also very much involved in this. And one of our colleagues, her name is Elim Chiu, very entrepreneurial. So she is in a F&B business, which is really quite badly affected, even though there may be food deliveries. But I think she very quickly tried to identify new opportunities. She very much early on got into the business of looking at sanitizers, face masks. So we have to put our antennae up to ask ourselves, in such an environment, what are the products or services that people really need? Of course, in different countries, it will be different. So maybe even hair cutting equipment, for me, I'm not a good example because I belong to the minority. I've been cutting or shaving my own hair for the last 20 years, and I can do it. Okay, but what I'm just saying is that there may be certain products or services that are much more strongly required during this period of time. We can look at that, especially with e-commerce platforms that can be very, very helpful. But not only that, I would always say this gives a person a wonderful opportunity to take a step back, reflect, because in non-COVID times, we may be too busy, too engrossed with our day-to-day business. We don't have a time to pause. So this is a good time to pause, take a step back, reflect, think about your own business, rethink about the business. Should this be the business you are in? And if you are in this business, what can you do Identify who really are your most important customers. Identify whether in the last few years have you been misdirected or have you been spending more time on areas that you shouldn't be spending on. So it's a good time to reflect. It's actually a good time to think about your competitive strategy, because your competitors themselves may be in a disarray. Sure, it can be chaotic, it can be depressing. Um, there will be various stages of depression, but hopefully come to the last stage, acceptance of this situation. So think about your strategy, think about the competitor strategy, reflect on the environment. As just now I mentioned, please don't think only about competing today. Think about competing for tomorrow. Ask yourself what tomorrow will look like. What will be the post-COVID situation? It's unlikely to go back to the same thing as the pre-COVID situation. But also, there's one very important opportunity. A friend in need is a friend indeed. This is a tough time for many people. But where you can, please extend a helping hand. There isn't such an opportunity that will always come knocking. This is a time when people really need help, and where you can, please extend a helping hand. They will remember you for life. Please do it not just in terms of thinking about businesses, but do it with a heart. As I mentioned, it is not a situation we welcome, but when this situation arises, opportunities also spring up, which we should try to make the best use of it.
Okay. All right. Finally, what resources would you recommend for new startup entrepreneurs?
Okay. So for resources, it's a very good question, because I myself, I'm reaching retirement age. I've been with Nanyang Technological University for 35 years.
You still look
The
young
only
though.
Oh, I'm already 65.
You're my
Next month
age.
is not. Oh, you look younger than me, Fang. Yes. And
Maybe it's the lights.
also for me. And I have no regrets. In fact, I am just so grateful to have an occupation that I am passionate about, which I love, which I find is very meaningful. So I myself will also have to think about what next to do. So I may also want to become a startup as well. So in terms of the resources, as we mentioned, unless you are blessed with a family that is already very resourceful, who may be able to give you a helping hand, we will have to start very small. We may have to think about various platforms like crowdfunding. We may have to think about various ways whether we can have sponsors. Sometimes a lot of people will look at it. Some people who have the means, sometimes they're willing to help if they find that what you do is very meaningful. Most important is if what you want to do touches their heart. So if what you want to do is just to want to make money, it's unlikely to touch their heart. So the resources could come through with partnerships, as I mentioned, through crowdfunding, through raising funds could be with your family members, with your relatives, with your friends. But most important, please be transparent. Please be honest. That's why I mentioned in my 4 P's, principles is very, very important. If you are not honest, if you are greedy, once you lose somebody's trust is very important. Trust has to be earned. So build the trust, build a good cause, build a good purpose, have a very meaningful purpose for your business. The result of it, you can be making money. That is fine. But if you do really make a lot of money, and this is what I would urge all those who are very rich, please don't leave everything just to your family. In fact, if you leave everything to your family, you may be spoiling not them, maybe the next generation, maybe the 3rd generation, the 4th generation, the 5th generation. Instead of leaving everything for them, start a foundation. Start a foundation, do good. Start a foundation, provide an example for your 10th generation, 20th generation to come, 30th generation, because what you want to pass down is your values. Maybe I just share something here with you, Park.
Please.
My ancestors, they come from Hainan Island. So my grandfather, together with 5 of his brothers, emigrated from Hainan to Malaysia. So I remember what my father told me. He said that don't ever forget your roots, don't ever forget your family members. As a professor, I have limited means. I'm not a rich person, but I am able to one fine day gather the family members, in other words, the grandchildren of these 5 brothers, all together. So I was able to gather 100, slightly more than 120 over family members, and I hosted a dinner. And for me, it's not the name of hosting the dinner, but what I wanted to do is that after that, we were able to establish the email addresses network. So what I just wanted to do is, when I can, because I'm still the 3rd generation, not too far away, to still be able to build this family network. And what I hope to do is that sometime the next generation, future generation, they may want to build back the network. At least now they have the connection to this way. So what I would always say is that for any budding entrepreneur, aim to be very successful. If you become very successful, please think about others. Set up a foundation. Your family is very important. Of course, it's sometimes not possible. There may be some awkward or some bad apples within the family, but just do as best as you can. Think about your family. Think about your country people. Think about the world as well. And for those who are staying in the US, this is your host country. This is the country that some of you may become citizens of. Please also think about them. They're kind enough to host you, to allow you to stay in the United States. So do your best, help everyone, but do not also forget your fellow Indonesians back in Indonesia.
Okay. Like leaving a legacy.
Yes, very, very important. Ask yourself, and this is something I always, for my very first class, I will ask my students this question. I say I have 2 questions in life. So in your life, what is the purpose of your life? I ask them. So because I do run classes for entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship classes. So I say, please reflect that. Ask yourself this question. At the end, when you get your degree, on your day of your graduation, please write again, what is the purpose? See whether there is a difference between what you have at the start of your education here and at the end of your education. So 2 questions is, what is the purpose? Second thing is, what legacy do you want to leave when you leave this world? Every one of us have to leave this world. So to me, ultimately, these are still the 2 most important questions. What is your purpose in life? What legacy do you want to leave? Thank you very much, Park. You prompted me with this very important question. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Professor Den Hooi. It's really, really inspiring what I'm hearing here. And also for KabariNews.com viewers, I thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, Park. Thank you. And best wishes for Kabari News.
Thank you.